Magic Kingdom is a theme park built on top of another floor. Its castle contains precisely 0 bricks. One of its opening day attractions was originally designed for a ski resort that never existed. And the 999 ghosts in the Haunted Mansion have apparently never been audited. But Disney history has a problem. A documented fact, a joke inside an attraction, and something a tour guide's cousin once heard can all become official after enough people repeat them online. So today, we are separating 3 things: documented history, attraction lore, and myths that remain unverified. We are starting at the entrance, moving land by land, and ending with some 100-year-old machinery hiding in plain sight. This is 25 Secrets of Magic Kingdom. Magic. After Walt Disney died in December 1966, his brother Roy delayed retirement and took responsibility for completing the Florida project. The place could have been marketed simply as Disney World. In fact, company executive Cardwalker argued that the shorter name would be easier to market. Roy refused. He insisted on Walt Disney World, so there would be no confusion about whose project it had been. That makes the resort's full name more than branding. It is effectively a permanent memorial from one brother to another. Every time somebody says, "Why do people keep calling it Disney?" Roy's ghost quietly opens a PowerPoint titled Brand Standards. The public first entered Walt Disney World and Magic Kingdom on October 1st, 1971. But that was not the official grand opening. Disney waited until October 25th to hold the formal dedication. The gap gave the company more than 3 weeks to identify problems before the ceremonies and national attention arrived. Roy Disney delivered the dedication on that later date. So, when one trivia question says Magic Kingdom opened on October 1st and another says October 25th, the dates are not necessarily fighting. October 1st was the public opening. October 25 was the official grand opening and dedication. Disney had invented the soft launch before software companies found a way to make it last 3 years. The famous tunnels beneath Magic Kingdom are real, but the word tunnels creates the wrong mental picture. Disney did not finish a normal park and then send miners underneath it. The official Keys to the Kingdom tour describes the guest-accessible areas as the second floor of a massive structure. The operational level sits below, and the themed park was constructed above it. So while you are standing on Main Street, you are not exactly at natural ground level. You are standing over backstage infrastructure. Magic Kingdom is therefore not merely a theme park, it is a very large building wearing a theme park as a hat. The lower level is known as the Utilidor system. Cast members, deliveries, supplies, and even rubbish can move below guests without crossing the themed spaces above. That separation matters. A functioning park needs food, costumes, maintenance, security, and waste removal. A convincing fantasy park needs you not to spend your vacation watching those systems collide with the story. The exaggeration is that there is an underground city beneath the entire Walt Disney World property. Disney's own description is specifically about the structure beneath Magic Kingdom. It is extensive. It is not a secret subway system connecting every hotel, golf course, and churro cart in Florida. Main Street, USA, uses forced perspective to make modest buildings feel larger and more storybook-like. Disney's historical record says the ground floors were built at roughly 7/8 scale. Each level above them becomes proportionally smaller. Your brain reads those shrinking upper floors as greater height and distance, even though the buildings are not as tall as they appear. It also explains why the street feels believable, but never completely normal. The proportions are close enough to reality that you accept them, but distorted enough to create a controlled fantasy. Main Street is basically lying about its height on a dating profile, but with considerably better architectural planning. Look above the stores and you will see names painted onto windows as though they belong to fictional businesses. Many of those names honor Imagineers, executives, and other people who helped build or operate Disney parks. The fictional businesses frequently refer to the honoree's particular contribution. The tradition began at Disneyland and continued in Florida. Roy Disney specifically encouraged using the second-floor windows to recognize people who played major roles in the Florida project. The result is a credit sequence hidden in the scenery. Most movies make you sit through 8 minutes of names after the story. Magic Kingdom makes you walk underneath them while buying a plastic sword. The large American flag in Town Square is not simply part of the decoration. Magic Kingdom has held a flag retreat ceremony every day since the resort opened on October 1st, 1971. A service member or veteran visiting the park is selected as the U.S. Armed Forces representative of the day. The flag is lowered and cast members recognize the honoree. It is one of the few moments in Magic Kingdom that deliberately stops being fantasy. The ceremony is not about a character, film, or attraction. It is a real civic ritual taking place inside an environment otherwise designed to transform reality into entertainment. The flag used during Magic Kingdom's formal dedication on October 25, 1971, had its own unusual journey. According to the Walt Disney Archives, the 9 by 5 foot flag had flown over the White House on October 1st, the same day Walt Disney World first opened to the public. It was then raised over Magic Kingdom during Roy Disney's dedication later that month. Afterward, the flag entered the archives collection. This is not decorative backstory invented for the park. The physical flag survives as an artifact. Some Disney secrets are optical illusions. This one is simply an extremely well-traveled piece of cloth. Cinderella Castle stands 189 feet tall, but it is not constructed like a medieval European castle. Disney says it was built from concrete, steel, cement, plaster, and fiberglass. No bricks were used. The stone blocks you appear to see are scenic surfaces, not a giant stack of masonry. That makes sense because the castle is not a defensive fortress. It is a weather-resistant theatrical structure that must look convincing from specific guest viewpoints. So yes, it is a real building. No, it is not a real castle in the sense that it could repel an invading army, unless that army is particularly afraid of fiberglass and restaurant reservations. Cinderella Castle took approximately 18 months to build and was completed around July 1971, only a few months before opening day. Disney has also reported that the structure used nearly 280 tons of steel and other materials. Many decorative features, including turrets, gargoyles, and artificial stonework, were fabricated away from the site, delivered and lifted into position by cranes. That is the practical reality behind the fairy tale silhouette: industrial steel, modular scenic components, and a deadline literally posted over the castle clock reminding workers that the park had to open in October 1971. Apparently, even Cinderella Castle was completed under a very aggressive sprint schedule. Cinderella Castle is often described online as a copy of one particular European castle. Disney's own history describes it more accurately as a romantic interpretation of a French palace fortress. The lower section resembles the heavy Romanesque architecture of medieval fortifications. The upper section shifts into the taller, more elegant Gothic forms associated with later centuries. It is a deliberate architectural collage designed to look emotionally correct rather than archaeologically exact. The exterior includes 18 towers with spires and 13 gargoyles. In other words, it is historically inspired, visually coherent, and completely unsuitable, as evidence in an argument between architecture professors. Inside the castle passageway, 5 large mosaic murals tell the story of Cinderella. Each Gothic arch panel is roughly 15 feet high and 10 feet wide. The murals were designed by Disney legend Dorothea Redmond and assembled from hundreds of thousands of pieces of glass. Disney's archival account says the artist used more than 400 colors, plus additional accent colors, with some glass infused with silver and 14-karat gold. Some pieces are tiny enough to be compared with the head of a tack. This is a detail most guests pass in less time than it takes to decide whether the stroller traffic is moving. The hallway is essentially a major work of decorative art, functioning as a pedestrian shortcut. There really is a suite inside Cinderella Castle. The version known to modern guests opened in 2007 during Disney's Year of a Million Dreams promotion. A different family could be selected to stay there each night. It was therefore introduced as a special promotional experience, not ordinary hotel inventory with a nightly rate and a button marked Book Now. That is why asking how much the room costs has traditionally produced an unsatisfying answer. Its value came from being unavailable through normal purchasing. And the modern suite is not a preserved apartment, where Walt secretly spent his Florida weekends. It opened more than 40 years after Walt's death. Disney may suspend your disbelief. It cannot suspend the calendar. The Liberty Tree in Liberty Square is a real live oak, not a giant artificial trunk hiding an attraction. 13 lanterns hang from its branches. Each represents one of the original 13 American colonies. It is an unusually restrained piece of Disney symbolism. There is no recorded voice explaining it, no screen flashing 13 patriotic facts, and no lightning lane to stand beneath it. The meaning is simply embedded in the landscape for guests who stop long enough to look up. That is also a useful theme park survival tip. Whenever thousands of people are staring at the same obvious object, check the trees. The Imagineers probably put something quieter there. The Hall of Presidents opened with Magic Kingdom in 1971, but the basic idea was already about 15 years old. Walt Disney and his team had planned a Liberty Street expansion for Disneyland in the 1950s. One proposed show would have presented the presidents and the founding of the United States. The full concept proved too ambitious at the time, so the team concentrated on Abraham Lincoln. That work became Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln at the 1964 New York World's Fair. The technical and creative lineage later reached Florida as the Hall of Presidents. So this opening day Magic Kingdom attraction is partly the complete form of a Disneyland expansion that never existed. You may have heard that the brown pavement running through Liberty Square represents raw sewage that Colonial residents dumped into the street. The story is widely repeated by Disney fan sites, and the visual interpretation is plausible. But plausibility is not documentation. I could not locate an official Disney historical source confirming that the brown path was intentionally created as a river of sewage. That does not prove the story false. It means the responsible verdict is unverified, presented as fan lore, not as an undisputed Imagineering fact. Also, perhaps do not spend too much vacation time loudly explaining the sewage path while strangers are eating funnel cake. At Disneyland, the Haunted Mansion's stretching room is an actual elevator. It carries guests downward so they can pass beneath the railroad and reach the attraction's show building. Magic Kingdom did not have the same spatial problem. Its version preserves the scene because the scene is excellent, not because guests need an elevator. In Florida, the floor remains in place while the ceiling rises. The gargoyle mantle also moves upward more slowly, helping preserve the proportions and sell the illusion. Magic Kingdom has 2 of these rooms, so groups can be processed efficiently. The room is stretching. You are not. This is good news unless you were hoping to become tall enough for Space Mountain during the pre-show. The transparent dancers and dinner guests in the Haunted Mansion Ballroom are commonly called holograms. They are not. The scene uses a form of Pepper's ghost, a theatrical illusion developed long before theme parks. Carefully controlled light and transparent surfaces place reflected figures into the apparent scene, making solid performers look translucent and supernatural. The brilliance is not that Disney invented the underlying optical principle. It is that Imagineers staged it at enormous scale, concealed the machinery, and synchronized it with a moving ride system. The Haunted Mansion is therefore using a 19th century stage trick to fool guests carrying 21st century phones, and it continues to win. The ghost host tells riders that the mansion contains 999 happy haunts, with room for 1 more. That number is absolutely part of the attraction's official lore. Disney itself continues to refer to the 999 happy haunts, but it should not be treated as a literal count of every visible ghost, portrait, voice, prop, and supernatural suggestion in the building. Fans who attempt a census immediately encounter a definition problem. Does a moving object count? Does a face in a graveyard count? Does one illusion represent one ghost or several? Verdict: 999 is canon dialogue, not an audited paranormal population report. The Haunted Mansion has no transparent methodology and has declined to release its raw dataset. Pirates of the Caribbean feels inseparable from classic Magic Kingdom, but it was not there on opening day. Imagineers initially believed Florida visitors were already familiar with pirate history and legends. Instead of reproducing Disneyland's attraction, they planned a huge Western-themed complex called Thunder Mesa, including a boat ride known as the Western River Expedition. That plan did not become the expected replacement. Florida's Pirates of the Caribbean opened on December 15, 1973, more than 2 years after Magic Kingdom. So Pirates is not an opening day original. Magic Kingdom went from Florida already has enough pirate lore to constructing an entire pirate invasion anyway. The Country Bear Show has one of the strangest origin stories in the park. Walt Disney proposed a ski resort in California's Mineral King Valley during the 1960s. He wanted a band of audio animatronic bears to entertain visitors. The resort was never built, but the bear concept survived and moved into the plans for Walt Disney World. Country Bear Jamboree opened with Magic Kingdom in 1971. It became the first major Disney park attraction to debut in Florida, and then be copied at another Disney park. The current Country Bear Musical Jamboree is therefore descended from an après-ski entertainment act that lost the ski resort, moved across the country, and found stable employment in Frontierland, a fairly normal entertainment career. Walt Disney's Carousel of Progress began at the 1964 New York World's Fair in General Electric's Progressland Pavilion. Its central trick is easy to miss because the scenes feel like separate theaters. The stages remain around a central core, while the seated audience rotates from scene to scene in a ring of theater sections. The show moved to Disneyland in 1967 and then to Walt Disney World in 1975. Walt was deeply involved in developing its characters, staging, and optimistic view of technology. That makes it one of the clearest surviving links between Magic Kingdom and Walt's own creative work. It is also the rare attraction where the building moves you because asking several hundred guests to change theaters every 4 minutes would turn progress into a riot. It's a Small World also debuted at the 1964 New York World's Fair. But the physical fair attraction was later relocated to Disneyland in California. Magic Kingdom received a recreated version when the Florida park opened in 1971. It shares the concept, song, and design lineage, but it is not the literal World's Fair installation shipped to Orlando. This distinction becomes blurred because Carousel of Progress did eventually relocate to Walt Disney World, while It's a Small World went west to Disneyland. The broader point remains: Magic Kingdom contains a remarkable amount of World's Fair creative DNA. But that DNA is spread across descendants, adaptations, and one unusually persistent rotating theater, not one truck carrying the entire fair to Florida. The idea behind Space Mountain began with Walt and plans for Disneyland, but the available technology was not ready during his lifetime. The concept received a second chance at Magic Kingdom. Imagineers built an indoor, computer-operated coaster with 2 separate tracks. The Florida attraction stands 183 feet tall and opened on January 15, 1975, with astronauts among the guests at the ceremony. That made Magic Kingdom's version the first Space Mountain anywhere. Disneyland's opened later. This creates a useful piece of Disney trivia. Pirates came to Florida from a California original, while Space Mountain traveled in the opposite direction. Tomorrowland's future arrived in Florida first, powered by a 1970s computer system now old enough to complain about modern user interfaces. The Walt Disney World Railroad does not merely use modern engines dressed to resemble antiques. Its 4 steam-powered locomotives were originally built between 1916 and 1928. That means every one of them existed decades before Magic Kingdom opened, and some are now more than a century old. These are genuine historic machines circling a park, designed to turn history, fantasy, and technology into one continuous experience. That may be the best final secret because it captures how Magic Kingdom works. The park can make fiberglass look medieval, make a ceiling look supernatural, and make old industrial machinery feel timeless, sometimes all before lunch. Magic Kingdom's real secret is not one tunnel, hidden room, or optical trick. It is the layering. Below you is an operational system keeping the show alive. Around you is architecture manipulating scale and distance. Inside, the attractions are technologies borrowed from 19th century theater, mid-century industrial design, and the 1964 World's Fair. Mixed through all of it are unfinished ideas that survived by changing form. A canceled ski resort became Singing Bears, a rejected Disneyland expansion evolved into Liberty Square, and a coaster Disneyland could not yet build opened first in Florida. The myths matter too, because they show how easily a good story can outrun its evidence. Unverified does not mean boring. It just means we do not have to pretend certainty to make the park interesting. Subscribe for the next park, where the architecture becomes stranger, the engineering becomes larger, and the original plan was not supposed to be a theme park at all. Next stop, Epcot.